Yeah. Hello out there, everybody who are fans of Joanne Shenandoah, my beautiful wife, and partner of 30 years. And we're here in Hamilton Chapel. We're only about 50 yards, not even that, from where the cemetery is located, where Joanne was just buried about an hour ago. And this is a wonderful place. Jeff Van Arn, the minister here, has allowed us access to this wonderful, wonderful building. And we've been here before and always been received with a great deal of friendship. And as people know, that the college itself is named after Alexander Hamilton, but it was co-founded by Joanne's ancestor, Shenandoah. In 1793, it was called Oneida Academy. And then it was chartered to help provide for educational needs of not just Oneidas, but Native people in general and settler people. And one of the things that Shenandoah wanted, Joanne's ancestor, was make sure that it was a school where both people learned to respect each other. That's what Joanne was fond of saying over the years whenever she mentioned Hamilton College. And we performed here, or she did, and I lectured here. And we thought that when we were looking for an ideal place for interment for Joanne, and this would be within Oneida territory, would be the ideal place where she'd be safe and among her intellectual peers and only a few feet away from Shenandoah. So it's kind of an affirmation of a friendship, a renewal. Well, let me explain, if I can, what happened in the past couple weeks, well, the past few months that caused Joanne to leave this earth. And as fans of hers know from across the world, that Joanne in 2015 got a case of C. diff, which is kind of a mild infection. It was not diagnosed in the right way, in the right time, and she got gradually more ill, and she was scheduled to go to Korea in October of that year with Leah, and she came back and she had double pneumonia, and her lungs were filling with fluid, and she was literally drowning. We had to take her to the ER to Syracuse, St. Joseph's Hospital, where they performed emergency incisions into her lungs and were drawing out liters of liquid at a time. And she was delirious and semi-aware of what things are happening around her. But the conditions at that time were similar to what would happen to her in subsequent years. And so we transported her to Rochester Strong Memorial. And then from there, her situation had gotten very serious, and we had to take her by jet, private jet, to Jacksonville, Florida, Mayo Clinic. And she spent 6 months there recuperating. She was set for an operation in April. There were 7 patients on one floor that were going in that day. And Joanne was number 7, and then they saw a marked improvement in her health, for which they had no rational explanation. And they decided to wait. And well, a few days turned into a few weeks, so she turned to a few months, and then they discharged her in July. And I asked her physician why Joanne had healed when her liver was compromised, and they said they didn't know. And I asked if she would heal completely, and their response was they didn't know. So I took her home. And for the next few years, 5 years, Leah and I watched over her. She still had sporadic issues with her pneumonia, but she was being creative and traveling. And that's September. We went to Europe and spent a few weeks there, and that really invigorated her. But 5 years pass, and in August she has relapse. Now, the cause of that relapse, the doctors never figured out. We thought it might be because she ingested by accident, some cleaning fluid that was labeled as lemon juice. But that was simply one indicator. What they could never find out at the hospitals in Syracuse, what happened to her. Why was she experiencing these hallucinations, and her cognitive awareness was being clouded. So we spent almost 2 months in Syracuse at various hospitals, and they had teams of neurologists, and they were giving all sorts of tests, and there was nothing wrong with her brain, because that showed normal function, but something was causing the liver to deteriorate, and other than cirrhosis, which she got as a result of C. diff, or scarring, which is resulted from that episode. But in August 1st of this year, she received a shock, and that's what the doctors are interested in. They ruled out that cleaning fluid thing, and they asked me if Joanne had been suicidal or self-destructive, and I said, no, not in any way. She was full of optimism. And that was the mystery. So 2 hospitals in Syracuse, and then the condition got very serious, and I said, well, where's the best facility in the U.S. for liver transplant? And they said at that time it was Scottsdale, because the clinic in Jacksonville was inundated with COVID. So we flew her out to Scottsdale on August 15th, and they stabilized her. They told her she had 90 days function left in her liver, but she was a priority for transplant. But again, Joanne mystified them, because she began to get slowly better. Never quite 100 the way she was, but improving. And her MELD scores were going down, and ammonia levels were going down. But by the middle of November, they had her on what they call deferred list, not an active list, and that makes a big difference. And they said that in order to get a liver, she had to have a domestic standing somewhere within 20 minutes at a Mayo Clinic. And it took me a while, a couple weeks, but I found it. And then they said at a conference meeting that our daughter Lee was at, and her sister Diane, and our friend Sam, and we were in a room, and Joanne's sitting on the bed, or laying on the bed, and there's about 15 doctors around her. This is the team that decides whether or not she gets a transplant, and they rejected her. They said, we're not changing our position, that she is not qualified for a transplant because we cannot find out what the neurological issue was. And if they didn't know what was causing the intellectual problems, then they said a transplant would be useless because it would be rejected. And what they did is they put her on deferred list, gave her, they released her to these care workers company, and she only lasted 3 days before we had to bring her to ER because her legs were swelling in her stomach. And they drained, within an hour, they took 16 pounds of fluid out of Jo. And she was never fully intellectually aware. But her situation did not look imminent. Last weekend Leah got there and she rallied. She looked very good. She was going to be taken out of the Mayo Clinic for transportation to New York, and because they figured New York might find out what the source problem is, because they couldn't. Amazing statement for a hospital of world-class standing to acknowledge they essentially failed. And so we had Leah and Gretch and Ryder come out, and they were able to. Leah was able to make communication with her mom, and Joanne looked very, very good up until the evening of her when she had this massive bleeding caused by a ruptured heart blood valve in her liver. In effect, what the doctor said, it shattered for an inexplicable reason. And they tried for 2 hours to keep her functioning and alert and alive. Her heart stopped. After 2 hours, they called me and said it didn't work, that her liver stopped functioning in her lungs. So we went back to the hospital to be with her, and Leo and I with her the last 15 hours of her mortal life. And we were there at the end when she took her last breath. The way you're supposed to, that's your duty. And now we're faced with the dilemma, all the technical stuff. Transportation, location, they want a burial site, a lot of information that I didn't want to give. But I had to, and in the end what took place is they, after Joanne had her cardiac arrest, they started shutting off the IVs and all the other mechanical devices. And she passed away at 9:41 on November 22nd. But the dilemma was still there. How do we get her to New York? Because now we got to transfer her as a body, not as a living human. And a friend of ours made a jet available, but then the jet malfunctioned while it was on the tarmac. The starter went. And so we were stranded. Phoenix, eve of Thanksgiving. But we did find a place that food Joanne would have really, really enjoyed, Thai food. We took her we went there, and then we came back, and then next day we had a visit from grandmother Percy. And by pure chance, she was available. She lived nearby, and she came and spent 2 hours with us, worked us through the process of guilt. Not guilt, but guilt on my part, because I couldn't stop Joanne from dying, but sorrow and condolence. And she told us about her daughter who had died in a car accident 12 years ago, and to carry that grief. But she did give us a sign of hope, and that was if we were to bring Joanne and put her in a sacred ground, that her spirit could be released to do a lot of good. And so our friend Cassandra Harris called us purely by chance and mentioned Hamilton. And grandmother Percy felt instinctively that was the right thing to do. That it would happen because Joanne wanted it to happen. And so what we did is the jet was working. We put her in a jet, come back in Syracuse. Another little stunt Joanne pulled is she pulled the clouds over Syracuse, so it didn't look like we could land there until we got very close to the city, and it opened up. So we brought her back home on November the 29th or 28th. And we kept her there for almost 10 days. And we watched over her, we attended to her. Our niece washed her hair, and she looked as good as you can under those circumstances. And there was a lot of opposition within the United about where to put her body, and we had to endorse the idea of the grandma and Joanne speaking through her that she wanted to be at Hamilton College. And so we overcame formidable resistance, and people gradually accepted that Joanne was going to be in a place that we deemed safe on our terms for the most part. And it worked out exactly what I would have hoped for. Joanne's family, about 300-400 of her most intimate friends and relatives were there. So that's what we did today. Is we had a beautiful burial ceremony for her. She was in a wooden coffin, and it's very close to her ancestor Shenandoah. That the trustees made an exception. They don't usually grant this, but they did for Joanne, and they said some beautiful words about her contributions to American music, and how determined she was that Native people would also be able to do this, get their voices heard. And tributes have been coming everywhere, and beautiful reports in the New York Times, Washington Post, and other publications, especially NPR, by far the best. And so her fans and friends could get an idea of what she meant to the nation by reading those stories. And some of them are very moving and personal. But for me, I've seen these things happen over many, many years where Joanne has just simply walked into a room and affected healing. When people look and hear her sing, that music was profound. But afterwards, come up to have all these people contact me and express their admiration for her. So we did the ceremony, and I wanted everybody to know that, and all of her fans and her friends, that Joanne is safe. She is well taken care of. She is on her way to the stars. That at the moment her body was in the earth, and the first handfuls of earth was put on her coffin, that she was gone. And our instructions are to let her go wait until the passage of 13 lunar months, and then we can call upon her again. But nothing should stand in the way of her celestial return. And so I believe that. But all of us are suffering enormous loss, and she had so many projects ahead of her. And it was amazing what this girl was going to do in the next part of her life. But just so everybody knows that when she did pass away at the Mayo Clinic, it was a mystery. Her arrival there was, again, enveloped by mystery. The cause of her actual demise is a mystery. But we did the right thing we could, the best thing we could. So I'm hoping people will come to Hamilton College in Clinton, New York, not Hamilton Town, and come visit with Joe. And we've got a commitment from the Hamilton College that they were going to enhance their Native presence, and we're hoping to create a studio setting here in which Native people can come and record their music from across the country. So that's the report live, and also we're asking if, more specifically, if we can get about 250 people to contribute about $500 a piece to Joanne's Memorial Fund, and that'll help us retire the mortgage. And her home, which is on Oneida Castle territory and used to be the capital of Oneida, that can be turned into a learning center. That was Joanne's dream. But first, we got to get rid of that mortgage. So if anybody wants to help, just contact our address at Box 450 in Oneida, New York, 13421. It'll be posted on her website as well. And she does have a new album, Shenandoah Country, and that'll be available for marketing. And so the creativity lives on. So on behalf of her immediate family and her nieces and Ryder, this is where we are when it comes to the first part of Joanne. Now the next part is the legend. So that's where we are right now. And thank you all. Thank you all. And Leah wants to come to me.
Sure, I can try. All right. So I was hesitating because I'm just getting over COVID. My son and father also have it, so it's been a really hard time on top of grieving my mom. And we can all tell the massive impact that her loss is bringing, because people from all over the world are reaching out to us and talking about how she changed their lives. And we've heard this, or I've heard this my whole life. And anytime she ever felt bad about herself, I would say, remind her that she's saved people's lives by through her lyrics, and like in the middle of the road, for example. And that was always really powerful to me. And also that her superpower was lifting people up and allowing them to follow their dreams and their gifts, no matter what that is, as long as it was within the arts. And she was one of my biggest supporters, always encouraging me to, pursue art or music or whatever made me happy. And she said, "Leah, I'd rather you be poor and happy than making a lot of money in a cubicle somewhere." And that always stuck with me, And she had a way about her, just like my grandma, Leah Shenandoah, that made everyone feel welcomed and loved and safe. She made everyone feel important and that you were her best friend. And her laughter was infectious, Being her only daughter, it wasn't easy growing up on the stage and sharing her with the world, but in her passing, I'm able to be grateful for the 40 years that we had spent. And I've seen, all of it. I've been there for everything, all of her, all the people's lives she's touched. And that's amazing. And it's an extension of what my grandma did. And, basing, our traditional teachings with compassion and respect and a good mind. And it always fascinated me that, they could always see the best in every situation. The term, lemons into lemonade saying was definitely true with them. They could make any situation enjoyable. And, it's my duty as her daughter to continue that legacy through my commitment to the arts, and I'll do the best I can. Our styles are different. The hardest part for me, not only losing her, but for my son's sake, Ryder, because they were really close. So that part is hard, but I've been telling him that she's in the sky world, and he knows that she's been sick for a long time. So, that's. And he also lost his dad in March, so it's been a really rough go for us. And I'm glad that she's at peace, because I think she had been suffering for a lot longer than she let on.
Yes.
And that woman was incredibly tough, because she was allergic to pain meds and had had countless surgeries without pain medication, which would kill the average person. So she was hanging on for us. I don't think she was ready to go, other than she probably couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
So, when I had spent the last day with her, I gave her a bougie spa treatment and, did her hair and was trying to do her nails and sing to her, and we watched School of Rock and Elf and laughed and danced, and we FaceTimed people, and I had a ill feeling in my stomach when I left. I didn't feel comfortable leaving her, but and she wasn't there when we saw her the next day. She had had the cardiac event at 4 a.m. that morning, and had she made it through that, she probably would have just been, just existing, which she would have wanted. And her light and beauty is eternal, and it'll always live on through her music and the people's lives she touched. And all we can do is just try to live our best lives and honor her, because she wouldn't want us to mourn her for too long. She would want us to be fabulous and healthy and productive, and keep fighting the good fight against colonialism, and just doing it with a good mind, and that doesn't. She did such things with such grace and style, and there will never be anyone like her again. She's an icon, and definitely a legend, and I will continue singing. I have my own band, and I have other music that will be coming out soon. Her and I had a lot of projects in the works that we were going to work on together, and I'll continue doing that too. But it's still a shock. It doesn't feel real. She was so young and vibrant and full of life. I always thought she was going to be here much longer, and I think I took her for granted. So, there's nothing I can do about that other than be grateful for what time we have and have had together, and take care of Doug and my son, and just keep moving forward. And we were thinking, in order to honor her and my grandmother, we want to turn the house into a cultural center, a la School of Rock kind of, and try to give back to our community through the arts. I have medals in textile training as well as music, obviously, and you can teach traditional and contemporary art, and potentially a decolonized pedagogy for the young children coming up, and my son included. I'm inspired by the Akwesasne Freedom School. I think it'd be really great to do something like that. And I can dedicate the rest of my life to doing that. So, we appreciate any support with that, and, we'll just keep doing the best we can. So, what, Go?
Yeah, true. So, actual ceremony today took place at, began at our house, and Joanne had been there for a few days, and we let her know what was going to happen. Paul Bears came in, they put her on the gurney and brought her to the hearse, and it followed the exact route of Shenandoah when he came here. He died in March of 1816, and then we got here, people were gathered, the gravesite had been readied, and the ceremony was was good. It flowed well. We had the first words were said, and then I summarized how we met and how I believed our marriage was divinely inspired. We had some singers, Kelly and Chris, Kelly Collins and Chris Wells. And then we had Tracy Shenandoah, who's a wampum keeper for Onondaga, and he spoke the words in Onondaga because Joanne was half Onondaga. And then we proceeded to put her in the ground, and everybody walked with around the grave, counterclockwise, with a handful of earth, put it on the grave, and that was that. And now what we call pallbearers are floating the grave as we speak, and then the feast occurs, and then a few days from now, the giveaway, in which we take some of the things Joanne owned and we give it to those who helped during this traumatic time. That's where we are right now. So, and then in the spring of 2002, Syracuse University will hold a massive concert for Joanne. And her album may be nominated for a country album of the year by the New American Music Awards. So things to keep aware of. So my thanks to everybody and all of you for just simply tuning in and then being reassured that